Hello.
Hello. How are you this evening?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right.
The long hello threw me off a little bit.
Hello!
Speaking of,
can't remember if that originated from Mrs. Doubtfire or Seinfeld.
well, Mrs. Doubtfire is what I associated it with.
They do a similar thing in Seinfeld, and I think that came later, but I don't know if it was based on Mrs. Doubtfire or if it was something else.
Speaking of, did you hear that there were actually like 4 different cuts of Mrs. Doubtfire?
No, I did not know that.
I don't remember exactly where I heard it, but it was recent. It was within the past few days that because of all of the ad-libs, they actually made I think it was a PG cut, an PG-13 cut, an R cut, and an NC-17 cut.
I don't doubt that one single bit. I mean, we got the PG-13 cut. That was what that's the biggest target at that time, or today
right.
too. But I'd love to see all of those.
I would too. I'm not sure how exactly that came to light. I don't know if it was just a general interview or something, but it piqued my interest. I'm going to have to look for some details and see if maybe they're going to release a special edition that has multiple cuts.
Well, you've created follow-up for yourself. Speaking of follow-up, I have a little bit from last week.
I saw that.
Yeah, real quick. And I guess this... I don't remember how this is from. Oh, yeah, this is... Oh, I started looking up when the last time we skipped a leap year. Like I said, we skipped it every 200 years, and I got completely distracted and did not get that information. I did not. So, I assume it's something I could probably easily find, but I got into this, a thought. So this is technically a topic and not follow up, but it was derived from an attempt to follow up with something. So I'll skip that and go to the actual follow up. And one of them is a correction. Betelgeuse is 642 and a half light years from Earth, and I think I said 452 light years from Earth. So the correct number is 642.5 light years from Earth. So that was easy. The other follow up I had was I mentioned Vega will eventually be the North Star. It will be the North Star in about 13,000 years. And that's why I was saying don't wait up. And
just a little bit outside the estimated lifespan of a human.
Yeah. In 3000 BC, the North Star, when I was looking this up, I found in 3000 BC, the North Star was called Thuban, or also known as Alpha Draconis. And so it has shifted in human civil, in the span of human recorded history.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, that also begs the question of when it shifted to being Polaris.
I think it was 130 BC.
I'm sure there's some correlation there, but I can't do that kind of math that quick at this point in the evening.
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing now?
Yeah, 130 BC. So it's not. So sorry. The wobble that the Earth is, that the Earth has, is a 26,000 year. Excuse me. Basically is a 26,000 year loop. So it keeps taking the same path every 26,000 years. And so because the stars are not a part of that loop, it just happens to be at some point we're going to be under this star and then under that star. So it's not like I guess you could probably predict something on that every 26,000 years, but it's not entirely clear to me.
Yeah, it's just another one of those things that helps recognize just how vast, like the limited scope of our ability to comprehend complex topics, I think is kind of what I'm looking at.
So because I messed up on my initial follow-up and created a topic thinking it was follow-up, I did want to look and say, every 4 years is a leap year, or not every 4 years is a leap year. The rule is that if the year is divisible by 100 and not divisible by 400, the leap year is skipped. So the year 2000 was a leap year, but years like 1700, 1800, and 1900 were not.
It's interesting, but it's really just more another example of how we make such complex structures to try to understand things.
Well, have you ever wondered when is Easter?
No, I just look at the calendar.
Yeah, it's hilarious to me how Easter is determined, because it's always a Sunday, and it's always 40 days before Tuesday, which is Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday. It's always 40 days before that, and that's where you get 40 days of Lent. But it depends on the moon. So it's the first Sunday after the Paschal full moon, or the first full moon after the vernal equinox. This
is part of why there's a case to be made, or a way that you can debate time manipulation and travel based on the simple fact that we constructed it as an element of how to describe something.
Yeah.
And so we can change that definition if we need to.
I mean, if you start getting into the astrophysics of it, time is just we perceive time as a linear passage most of the time, but it's not actually that, or there's good reason to believe that it's not that, and how we experience time is just a perception. So I always thought it was sort of maybe offensive to Christianity to have something based on a moon cycle.
I don't know. I think you could also make a case there that it is symbolic of the way Christianity has been used in the past to convert other religions by basically taking over certain rituals or applying different meaning to those rituals.
Saying it that way, I think, would be offensive to Christianity.
I'm sure. But, I mean, it has historically also been used as a way of diminishing or eradicating opposing views of thought.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, you're absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. But the way you want to spin it is that perhaps, Christmas, for example, it happens to be celebrated around the time pagan the pagan Romans celebrated Saturnalia, was so that they could blend in because they were persecuted at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could really abstract it even further and debate whether it was used as a way to oppose opposing views, actually as a method of doing so, or if it was a way to preserve those views because of the opposite. That just involves far greater understanding of history in general and those dynamics than I possess.
I'm sure that podcast exists out here. This is not it, though.
Yeah, definitely.
So we've had 10 minutes of follow-up. I guess this follow-up that I created that I thought was follow-up, that's actually it's like a micro topic, I guess. I guess I'll jump into right now.
Well, we were kind of teasing it a little bit or leading into it with the whole idea of perception in general. So
yeah, maybe we shouldn't talk about it.
That's what sparked it.
Maybe we shouldn't talk about it at all.
Just skip it. Leave everybody wondering.
Yeah, no. It's I guess I saw this February being the February 2021 was a rectangle month. I'm like, okay, interesting. And I looked at it and I was like, no, it's not. That's wrong. And it made me think, like, well, how do you view the weekend?
You mean as far as like printed out on a calendar, how would I look at a calendar and order the days?
I mean, that's usually where we start with that question.
I was just making sure I clarified because
no.
people can't see the same thing that we're looking at as far as the link in the notes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even without that, I mean, how do you look at the weekend? Like, how do you look at your calendar? How do you organize your calendar?
I don't really. So, like, for the work week, I actually have it just show me the work week, the Monday through Friday view, and not show me the weekends.
So you're...
And I don't really plan things on the weekends in a way that I look at a calendar for them.
So you're 5 boxes across?
Right.
Okay. So this sort of doesn't really... This might not necessarily apply to you. I guess...
Yeah, when I do look at a calendar, I tend to have it show up in the way that I expect from calendars that have always been printed in front of me, where it's Sunday and Saturday boxing the week.
Yeah.
So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I have gotten used to or accustomed to it being displayed in the fashion where Monday starts the week, and then you have Saturday and Sunday at the end of that row. But actually, mostly because of the way the Apple Fitness rings and all are displayed and presented, like the week there runs Monday through Sunday.
Okay, because that's what the link that I put in here. You know, if you look at Monday through Sunday, if you have a Monday through Sunday week, then February was a rectangle month. But I guess February could be a rectangle month any month, depending on what day you want to start with.
It could. I mean, you could draw it Wednesday to Tuesday, and it would still technically work.
Mm-hmm. I traditionally look like currently like my work calendar. I have Saturday and Sunday on it. I had never thought to remove those. Because I look at my work calendar more than any other calendar, and so I do like looking at the weekends. But I do Sunday through Saturday. And when I worked at Apple, I changed to a Saturday as the first day of the week in my calendar, because the way Apple's work week started on a Saturday. So the way they did scheduling and the way they recognized revenue, they started their work week on a Saturday. And it's just kind of like, because Saturday and Sunday generated so much revenue, they were always in the black for the week, for the most part, or the best way to get into the black for the week. And so I would look at my calendar that way for a few years, and I'm back to the Sunday through Saturday view, and I'm like, well, that's technically Sunday is the first day of the week, and Saturday is the last day of the week. And so February would not have been a perfect or a rectangle month because of that. But it got me thinking about the weekend, and I was like, well, how can it be the weekend if Sunday is the first day of the week? And then I thought, oh, they're just line segments. You know, there's a front end and a back end. So yeah, it could totally be the weekend.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you could also make a case for the way you interpret weekend to specifically be the days at the end of the week, which would then be Monday through Sunday, which I'm sure is how it was originally defined.
I think so too. Like, it's like the end of the work week, I guess. But I was just like, but lines have two ends. They have a start end and a back end, not end as in finality or completion. Well,
that depends on whether you count the number of weeks and then the week has an ending. Like, January, the first week in January is week 1, and then you go through week 52. And then each week would have a ending.
Yeah.
It just happens to touch the beginning of the next week.
Yes. Yeah. So.
Gotta love semantics.
I mean, yeah, nothing, none of this is, there's not necessarily like, if you say that Wednesday is the weekend, then yeah, well, it's sort of in the middle of the week, so it can't be the weekend. But unless you're like, it's the weekend for the previous week that started on Wednesday, then yeah, that, you can manipulate it that way. But generally speaking, we just define Sunday through Saturday as a week. And so there's not necessarily a right or wrong. And I just thought it was interesting that, like, if you start asking people how they conceptualize a calendar in general, you'll get all sorts of answers that you probably weren't expecting. Like, I've heard of people conceptualizing calendars in a circular fashion. They've conceptualized in colors. So it's interesting.
I can imagine most of them. I'm not able to wrap my head around conceptualizing it in a circular fashion, though.
Yeah, that was an interesting one that I heard, and I only heard it from one or two people. And there's a whole study of psychology called synesthesia, or studying synesthesia, and that's a form of it, and it expresses itself in many other ways. It's like there was a joke in the show Weeds where an accountant was talking about how he viewed numbers as colors, and he was an exceptionally good accountant because of his the way he conceptualized the numbers, and it was based on color.
I know we've had conversation before talking about how you think about things. Do you think about things in pictures, or do you think about things in words? And I mean, that's just another abstraction of that. And how do you feel things? Do you feel things that you associate with a color? Do you, the entire range of human experience can be classified in so many different ways.
It's really interesting. My younger son, over the last week, declared that he thinks in words, and I was so excited. It was so much fun for me to start talking to him about that, and it was a lot of fun because in his mind he was talking about the words that he saw and how they had, when he got excited, they had more exclamation points, and I thought that was so fun. Because there's not many. Because I think in words, and there are not many people that I know that think in words.
I meant to ask. I know one of your kids, you had mentioned, like, would create a like paper iPad or computer or whatever to play with.
Yeah,
made me think of that because it was, I guess, a week or so ago when Jacob did that. He created a computer.
That's awesome. At this point, both of my kids have done it, and they've done really creative things with what they have, and for a while, I felt like my older son was the more creative one doing those sorts of craft things, and now my younger son is. I would declare that he is now exhibiting or flexing that right now more than the older one. So it's amazing to see some of the things that they come up with and how they solve certain problems. I feel like I don't remember being that creative when I was a child, but maybe it's because, like, everything that I thought was, everything that would be considered creative, I thought was just normal.
And there's a huge difference in experiences and exposure to things. Like, there's no reason I would have ever thought to create a computer to play with, right? I mean, I remember when we got our first computer, and I was well past that particular stage in life where I would have done that. Instead, I was gravitating toward learning and playing on the computer, and it's just it's a new enough from a technological standpoint that we're just now seeing kind of how it influences what creativity looks like in younger generations.
Right, because the Turing Revolution happened as we were growing up. It happened during our formative years, and it happened quickly, faster than the Industrial Revolution, and you might say that this latter revolution might be more influential. Historians might want to argue that. They can argue in the comments.
Well, they'll argue in 10, 15 years. We have to give it time.
That's true. But, it's like, I remember a long time ago thinking, like, I remember when things didn't end with .com. Like, company names didn't end with .com. There was no www. I mean, at this point, there is no more www. It's not required anymore. It just, auto populates. But, yeah.
And you can strip it if you want to, actually, like completely, and have it not be a part of it.
Right. So it's mostly whether it needs to be stripped or not. I guess it's your browser that's automatically doing that.
Can be. It can also be based on the configuration you have with your domain registration and hosting and all that stuff. Like there are many places where that can change.
I don't know enough web dev, and nor have I. It's one of those things that it just works. At this point, like the omnibar is more important for search than actually putting in a URL.
So much has changed just in navigating. Like if you take a step back from that and just think about how did you search for things before, you always had to specifically go to a search engine.
You did.
And now it doesn't matter.
No, I mean you have a search engine, you have a default search engine that works from your browser address bar. I mean, it's not even accurate to call it the address. Well, no, I take that back. It is accurate to call it the address bar, but it's more appropriately named the omnibar because it does search and shows the address. Yeah.
So speaking of technology changing,
I was just thinking about that.
I was kind of intrigued by this item that you put in.
Yeah.
Because I started thinking about whether I might be able to resurrect the G4 Cube.
Yeah.
And I'll let you speak to what you put in.
So I thought about that when I was writing this. So I I saw a video, a relatively young guy. I think he's got a pretty decent following. He does a fair amount of Apple. I think all of what I've seen of his YouTube video has been Apple related. But I haven't, I'm not subscribed to his channel. I don't know all of what he puts out, but the things that are Apple related show up in my, the algorithms show me those things. And so, I feel like when I say the algorithms like that, it feels like, maybe that's how Odysseus would talk about the gods. The gods have told me, the algorithms have shown me. So I'd seen this one where he took the logic board out of a M1 Mac Mini and stuck it in an old iMac. It was one of the it would have been post late 2009, and I can't remember when they dropped the optical drive. I can't remember if that was 2013 or 2014, but it would have been one of the ones that had an optical drive, and it was a haphazard implementation of sticking an Mac Mini logic board inside of a iMac. And then I came across a German man, or at least I believe he's German. He sounded German. He did the same concept, took an M1 Mac Mini logic board and put it in an iMac G5. There's a little more room in the iMac G5, and his implementation was a bit better. He basically found a video board that allowed him to use one of the a port that is made for video out on the Mac Mini logic board. Had an input on this other board that had the same connector, the same sort of I think it's an LVDS. I think Apple was using LVDS connectors for the displays in those iMacs, and it had a connector for it on the other side, and he was able to run power to the power supply from the Mac Mini. So more or less kind of like hacked together a Mac Mini logic board inside of the iMac G5 and made it fairly well, fairly well routed, or rather routed the wires and ports in such a way that made it fairly usable, more usable than the first guy I saw. And the guy had 3D printed various brackets to make things work, and it was a pretty good implementation of that. And that just made me think about how, because I think we've talked about, like, I really would like to get my hands on an iMac G4, and I was like, oh, if I could get my hands on an iMac G4, and then somehow retrofit a logic board from an M1 Mac Mini into it, that would be so cool. Like I could sit and use it as like my primary computer, and I think that would be a lot of fun. I'd still have to solve the problem of using the Harman Kardon speakers, because I'm basically taking that out of the equation and have to re-engineer that audio connection. So I thought it'd be cool. The problem is finding one at a good price. So I've totally ruled out using a 15-inch because the resolution on the 15-inch is unacceptable. I mean, to be fair, they're all relatively unacceptable, but like all of the 15-inch panels used a 1024 by 768 display, or the highest resolution was 1024 by 768, and that's a non-starter.
Yeah, it would be pretty much unusable with any modern OS at this point.
Right. The 17-inch uses 1440 by 900, which is, I mean, that was really good at that was phenomenal at the time. And the 20-inch uses 1680 by 1050. And
you'd almost have to go with the 20-inch just to get semi-equivalent space.
I mean, I have been looking for the 20-inch for a long time. The 20-inch feels like if I can get a 20-inch, I'll get a 20-inch. I mean, the last display that I had, was a 27-inch Thunderbolt display, and it's 2560 by 1440. So I mean, it just the 20-inch just feels, I don't know. I've used 1920 by 1200, and the 20-inch is fairly close to that, and that was on a 24-inch display. So I don't, I never, I didn't think to compare the pixel density, but it just wet finger in the air, it seems pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you would see a bit of fuzziness in general, but like even if you connect to a Mac remotely, like it does a fairly good job of making you think that what you're seeing display-wise works for whatever size you select. So I would imagine that as long as you had enough room to play a little bit with like icon size and everything, you could fudge it enough to be okay with it. I think you would notice it pretty easily because it's not Retina. But at the same time, I don't think it would be overly glaring like it would be if you went to, 1024 by 768.
Oh, 1024 by 768. I feel like I could just, draw in the pixel margins. I feel like the pixel margins would be so obvious. I was using Mac Tracker to figure out what was what, and I'm a bit disappointed because it'll show the resolutions on the iMac G4, but it doesn't show the pixel density, and then on the LED displays it says what the pixel density is, and that's disappointing.
Well, I don't really remember it being much of a talking point prior to those anyway. So it's probably just a holdover from what were you really looking at from the tech specs before? You were looking at resolution. You weren't looking at pixel density.
I remember pixel density, like the first time I heard about pixel density, it was with iPods. It was, oh man, it was, I can't remember which iPod it was. I want to say it might have been the first Nano that you could play video on. I don't know, but it might have even been before that when it didn't even matter because you weren't even looking at videos. It was just, look how crisp our display is on this iPod. It's amazing, and it was an iPod because it's they're pushing Apple being Apple was pushing the envelope with their the smallest devices because they just because it would trickle up into the larger devices or trickle down to the larger devices. I don't know. It would trickle over. Point being is like it's easier to make a very high density display in a small device than it is to start with a big device, and so they did, and it that concept or that those numbers stuck into my head.
Right, but it still doesn't change that, like, for displays, I don't recall pixels per inch being something that I really ever cared about until Retina displays were introduced to the Mac lineup.
Yeah, but do they even talk about pixel density on that? Is that a spec that they put out?
I'm not sure if they do. Other people take care of that for sure. So I'd have to go back and look. I don't know if it's in any of the official documentation or not.
Yeah, I feel like so. Looking through Mac Tracker, pulling up like the most recent, the M1 MacBook Pro, the 13-inch MacBook Pro. It shows pixel density. It's listed, but back in I guess I wonder. I don't know what Mac Tracker is based on, but it might be. They might they update when new devices come out, as you would expect. And so it might be that they update based on the extended Apple tech specs page. And if, it's something that Apple lists there, then they probably list in here. So
it seems reasonable enough.
I could just as easily sort it out, figure it out by doing some math. But
yeah, but where's the fun in
that? Well, that's the thing. I don't want to do that. I want it to be there for me. I want to open a thing and I want the same information there. But if you're basing your information on what Apple publishes, then yeah, that's why they would, Apple chooses to publish this versus that. And in, I don't know, the early 2000s, the 20-inch iMac G4, it wasn't important to talk about. I mean, resolution was always important, but pixel density was unimportant. Resolution was an industry, something was comparable throughout the industry. So I thought it would be cool to do that. I'm starting to dive into the, what did we call those guides back in what were those guides called? AST, Apple Service.
Was it It sounds, it wasn't T, it was ASM, Apple Service Manual.
Oh, yeah. Apple Service Manual. I couldn't remember. AST.
Yeah, it took me a minute.
AST was something else.
Yeah, it was one of the utilities, wasn't it?
Okay, it was a testing diagnostic utility, maybe Apple Service Test.
That sounds rational.
I mean, ASD was Apple Service Diagnostic. That's the easy one.
Yeah.
That's the big one that, we used the most for servicing. And then there was what's the onboard one? Apple Service Diagnostic? I know we're digressing really bad right now.
That's all right. I don't know if the onboard one got that kind of name or if it was just Apple Diagnostics.
Or Apple AHT, Apple Hardware Test. That's what it was. Apple Hardware Test.
There you go.
Which was accessed by holding the letter D as it booted. And I think that's still the case. Like on you buy a brand new Mac, I think you can still do that. I assume that it hasn't gone away. I haven't heard about it going away. So, and then
I'm pretty sure that's still accurate because I think I remember when I was looking to see what the I couldn't remember the internet recovery keystrokes at some point, and it seems like the diagnostics were still listed.
Command Shift something?
I think it changed a couple of times. Command R or Command Shift R.
Well, then there was Command R was like the recovery mode, and then there was there's like the recovery mode that you access the hidden partition on your drive, and then there's like one that will access it from Apple servers from an internet connection.
Yeah, and it's been a little while since I've had to do that, which is why I would have to look it up again like I did last time, because it's not something I do frequently.
I remember being asked that in an interview for what are those things that Apple used to do when they were basically
career experiences?
Yeah, they were internships. And I remember being asked that in a career experience interview and I got it wrong. I got it wrong, and then in a follow-up interview, I was like, "Hey, I realized I got it wrong," and they thought it was funny. But I think they appreciated that I actually looked it up. So,
yeah, we can do a whole other topic on interview techniques and some of the things that have come out of understanding more about what gets you further in an interview and what doesn't. But it's also so company specific that I don't know how well that would translate it to a general audience.
Mm-hmm. I think and this was like the third, I think for that career experience, I think the third interview that I had, I was, I can't remember how, I was asked in that interview if there was anything if there was anything that, I guess like any questions that they had, like when they ask you, do you have any questions for me or whatever? And I remember asking like if they'd taken like one of the words are not coming to me tonight. One of the questions, I guess, or one of the qualifications for the career experience was somebody who had proficient in good technical note taking, and I thought I really like my note taking. Like I like how I write technical notes, and I remember in the interview there, the interviewer asked me if there was anything, any questions I had, and I said, "Hey, did you look at? Have you taken a look at my any of the cases, the repairs I've done, the case notes that I've written?" And he was like, "No," and I was like, "Oh, well, I knew that that was a qualification for this, and I would love it if you took a look at my case notes. I think I have really great case notes, and I'm really proud of them." And I remember one of the things one of the feedback was great about an interview like this, even though I didn't get, I got beat out by one other person. So even though I didn't get to move on and do that internship, I got actual feedback like, "Here's why we didn't pick you." And one of the things that the interviewer had to say was that he loved that I was like, "Here, go take a look at the work I've done. I'm really proud of this work. I think it'll be a reason, or it'll help my cause." And so ever since then, I've been like, I'll as you should, I go and I blow my own horn in a reasonable way and be like, "Hey, here are my strengths and so forth." And so, that has served me well in interviews since then.
Yeah, that concept as a whole, I think, does translate pretty equitably across the board. The whole point of an interview is to make yourself prominent above anybody else that is competing for selection. And so anything you can point to that is illustrative of what you bring to the table that may or may not be different, that you at least think is different, is generally well received.
Yeah. ATG was the thing I was trying to look for. Apple Technician Guide. I should remember that.
So many acronyms.
I remember. Not only were there so many acronyms, there was an article with a list of all the acronyms and their meanings, which I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, it was almost a requirement at a certain point, because there's any technical resource is only as good as what they can translate from A to B, right? And so, like in this particular case, you're talking about Apple as an entity and its customer as the end user. And when you have that many acronyms and you're trying to decipher things appropriately, you almost had to have a reference you could pull up and make sure you got it right.
I know. It was even to the extent it was like, what are the most common acronyms that people are going to use, and then use text replacement to change that, and so that it's like, okay, people are like, I'm not going to fight people typing this, but please don't like erase where where you get text replacement for you wrote, I don't know, whatever you wrote, KBB and changed it, and it changes to known bad board. Please, like, I just remember thinking, it's like, please don't try to fix that. So it was a losing battle.
Yeah, it's pretty much always the case in any technical realm anyway, right? Because you have to enter in so much data so quickly, more often than not, that shorthand tends to be the only way you can maintain that workflow, but it's very end-user antagonistic.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this was nowhere even remotely close to the topics that we had.
Well, that just, was, that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing that happens anytime. It's part of what I like about the fact that we're not rigidly attached to the show notes.
Well, if you want to get back to the show notes, I would. I was interested in hearing your thoughts about, or why you put this in the notes about virtualization on Intel Macs, and the second one. I'm really interested in where you're going to go with that. So, but go ahead.
Yeah, I've been looking. I've gone back around to trying to figure out a reasonable virtualization platform for being able to run, we'll just say, a Linux distribution for, keeping it relatively safe in general, I guess, for at-large consumption. But the idea of what is my best bet if I really want to run and use a Linux distribution on a Mac and not suffer through that use case. And there are many reasons that this has been an area of interest again. We don't necessarily have to go into those because I don't think it's pertinent. But it made me explore whether I could do it in a reasonable fashion without any additional software, or if it was easier just to go ahead and go with a commercial offering. Or scratch that, it is definitely easier to go with a commercial offering, but whether or not it was worth just going ahead and doing the commercial offering, or if I could continue to kind of tweak and make progress with open source technologies.
Let me
go ahead.
I'd like to just interject right here. There's a tab that I have saved open on my in Safari, and it's an article, and it's called "How to Make VirtualBox Full Screen: A Comprehensive Guide." I just want to let you know that I've had that there because I've been playing around.
Yeah, the only reason I even put VirtualBox in is because it's free. Most everyone recognizes it. It's often called out in guides or as a starting point for doing anything. I implore you, skip VirtualBox. Find an alternative. I don't care if you have to pay for it. VirtualBox is garbage. And I say that from the perspective of, if you need any level of reliable performance within that virtual machine, you do not want to use VirtualBox, not on the Mac. You might have better luck with it on other platforms. I doubt it based on my experiences, but you might. It's not designed in a way that is going to give you a good experience once you've been exposed to what else is out there.
I feel like VirtualBox is designed to look like it's going to be a great experience.
I actually don't think it is. I think it's designed to be relatively robust and capable for the vast majority of the needs of someone who needs to virtualize something but doesn't really care anything about what it is they're virtualizing. And what I mean by that is, maybe you have one application that you have to have Windows for and you use it once a week or something like that. Sure, put it in VirtualBox, run your application when you need it, call it a day. Like, I get that. That's a fairly solid use case that it's more than adequate for.
Right. You need the macros in Excel.
Yeah. Who knows? Whatever.
It's
probably a legitimate use case.
No, I just remember when that was like a huge use case, but I don't think that exists anymore because
yeah. Well, it's a security risk, so probably not.
No, I think that maybe a decade ago, the team that develops Office, so I know in 2008, Excel on the Mac had, I think, no macro support, and you had to use Excel for Windows to have any macro support, and they corrected that in the next version. And when they developed the next version of Excel, they developed it in conjunction with Mac OS. They developed both Mac OS and Windows, trying to have as much,
trying to achieve feature parity.
Yes, yeah.
And then, of course, now with it being, you can do web hosted with Office 365, and it doesn't matter.
It's no longer it's a no longer a relevant thing. It was anyway. That's how much Excel is in my life. I remember what it was like in 2008. So tell me about VirtualBox. What you were going to say about VirtualBox before I hijacked your thoughts.
Oh, no, that was pretty much it. I only listed it there as a starting point for the conversation because of how bad it is if you need it to do anything of any real level of performance. And that's what prompted me to look at alternatives. So a while back, I got the particular distribution of Linux that I have been playing with, running using native QEMU virtualization, which was a pain in the ass. It was absolutely nightmarish to figure out how to configure all of the different flags, and then I ended up having to create a shell script to launch the virtual machine that passed all the correct flags once I figured it out, just because I didn't want to type 3,000 characters into the CLI to get it to launch. But it worked mostly. The frustrations that I had with it, it was nice and fast. It definitely was as usable as installing the OS on the bare metal. So from that perspective, it was great. But required so much investigation into tweaking and figuring out what to change to make different things work appropriately that I finally gave up on trying to get VM to host networking and shared folders working. I just finally decided it wasn't worth the effort. That said, if all you want to do is to virtualize a specific environment and you're only working within that environment, it's well worth your time to go that route if you really are insistent about not paying for a solution and getting something that performs much better than VirtualBox. Just raw performance it's unmatched compared to VirtualBox. And that led me to recently deciding, you know what, Parallels has become a mature product. It's been a long time since I looked at what they had to offer. Now that I've had the experiences with QEMU and trying to do it natively, how does that compare to what Parallels is doing? And I couldn't really see a difference in performance. And it's a lot easier to get shit to work. And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to upgrade my ancient license to a current version and go that route and not beat my head against a wall trying to get little things to work anymore. Because that's the promise that the Mac gave me in the first place. And it's actually been really nice. It works flawlessly for what I need it for. Better in some ways because all of the interoperability between the host OS and the VM works the way it's supposed to. And I don't have to think about it. And so I am back to, if you want to virtualize any OS on the Mac, it is actually well worth your time or well worth it to spend some money and purchase one of the commercially available solutions, unless performance just does not matter to you at all for any reason. That's the big takeaway.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I've not gotten VirtualBox to do. I mean, I'm just goofing around, so I'm not like trying to like solve work problems or personal problems with a VM. I've just been goofing around, and it might be just to like, I want to see how this installation works, or I want to do, I want to just kind of, play around in this environment. But like, I haven't ever needed to use it for getting something done. I take that back. The last time I tried to use it to get something done was like a year ago. I wanted to virtualize Snow Leopard. So I wanted to virtualize an older version of macOS and the current version of macOS. And like, installation was pretty easy. Like, I got Snow Leopard up and running inside of a VirtualBox VM, but I couldn't get USB pass-through to work. And I don't even think I could. I actually got the networking to work. I got access to the internet through there. I actually, ran all of the updates, but I couldn't get USB to pass through to work, and I was trying to get information off of an old iPod. And so, because I was trying to run Sanuti, and I have a version of Sanuti that's requires an old OS. So, I actually got that installed. I think I had to put it like, I think I had to put it like on Dropbox, and then since I had internet access in the VM, I could pull it down from Dropbox. I think that's what I did. But that's just such a pain in the ass that it wasn't worth it. Well,
yeah, part of what prompted my decision to explore it again on the desktop side. So at home, I do have a machine set up running a hypervisor and some VMs in it for, pure remote in server style access. And the performance on those is just so much better than what I could do with VirtualBox. But there are times that I want to play with something that I don't want to spin up yet another VM on that host. For a number of different reasons. Some of it may be just the logistics of networking based on how I have that host segmented and not wanting to open up a route from that to this other thing that I'm doing, or maybe this other thing isn't even plugged into my home network because I have intentional reasons of keeping it segmented. Plenty of different scenarios that play out there. And so the big thing for me was just, I need solid, good, usable performance out of whatever I decide to go with that I can do at the desktop level and not rely on having to spin up a VM on the server in order to have it and move it and, do all this other finagling of infrastructure for a short-lived test. And Parallel surprised me with how well it handled the task so far, and so I finally today actually bought the upgrade license.
Nice. So I played around. So I played around with QEMU, and I don't remember how far I got. I don't remember if I was actually able to. I think I was able to read an ISO, but I don't really remember going much further than that. And I read a number of guides, and they turned out to not be helpful. And part of it was like I was trying to, there wasn't a lot of information out there for installing. Again, this is when I was trying to install Snow Leopard, because I started with the VirtualBox, and because I didn't have USB pass through, you'd mentioned QEMU to me, and I'd tried to do it there. And I think I was able to read from an ISO, but I don't remember actually getting it running, getting the OS running there. Maybe I don't remember. Anyway, I actually ended up using the 2 days that I owned a Mac Pro. I actually ended up using that Mac Pro was released when Snow Leopard was the current OS. So I just created a partition, installed Snow Leopard, and I didn't have to worry about USB pass through. I just used the USB drive or the USB port on the computer, and I think I used it for about 2 hours right before I sent it back. I remember waiting for them to respond. So with that Mac Pro, I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast or not. I guess it's worth reiterating. I bought a Mac Pro for $400. It was supposed to be it was listed as the 2010 revision of the Mac Pro, which at the time was compatible, like it would run Catalina, and that was the current Mac OS. And what I got was the 2008 it was the 2009 that you could kind of in a hacky way install firmware, the 2010 firmware, and make Catalina run on there that way. It was a hack, and that alone, I was like, okay, this is not the product that I bought, or this is not the product that was listed. I want my money back. On top of that, there was like a big dent in the tray, the CPU tray, and I couldn't remove the CPU tray. And I was like, well, part of having a Mac Pro is upgrading it, and if I can't pull out the CPU tray without damaging something, this is a non-starter. So in the interim, while I was waiting to hear back on whether or not the seller was going to accept the return, I installed Snow Leopard, did what I had to do to that iPod, and was good to go.
That's cheating, by the way.
I know. I mean, it just happened to be that I had to solve this problem with this iPod, and I just happened to have a Mac that ran the exact version of Mac OS 10 that I needed it to run. It was lucky. It was lucky. It's totally cheating, but it was lucky. But I'm actually looking at two MacBooks. I have a black and a white MacBook in front of me. Neither of them I bought. They were acquired when somebody said, "Hey, can you fix this Mac for me?" I'm like, "Yeah, let me take a look at it. It's gonna need a new logic port." No, I don't want to fix it. And they never took their computers. Like I tried getting their computers back to them and couldn't get in touch with them to do it. So I have a white and a black MacBook sitting on a bookshelf in front of me, and in my basement, I also have a 2006 iMac that runs flawlessly, and it has Snow Leopard on it. So, yeah, that's cheating.
I will circle back and say that with QEMU, I did get most things working well, and what was remaining, I probably, with more tweaking and investigation, could have had it working flawlessly. But one of the things that I did like that I had working well was I had 3 different scripts that I wrote that were just really just for the sake of not having to, remember the string of commands, because it was really just a 1-line command in each script. But I had one script that would launch the VM, and it launched quick, like it was booting bare metal solid state drives, etc. So I had the one script to launch it, the one script to take a snapshot and basically create a backup, but it was incremental, so you had to have the previous snapshots for it to be able to put it all together. It's the nature of the way, I don't remember the specific disk image type, but nature of the way it worked. And so I had a script that would create a snapshot and then update my launch script to use the most recent snapshot. And then I had another script that I could tweak if I needed to run a specific snapshot that I kept separate so that I didn't have to keep modifying my original launch script. And it was a workflow that worked extremely well.
I was just going to say, that's so fancy.
It became annoying when I would have to keep investigating and digging for little tweaks to make this one little thing work appropriately. And it became enough of a time sink that I decided to go back to looking at the commercial alternatives to see if they could run similarly from a performance perspective, because that's something I loved about doing the native virtualization. And I gotta say, Parallels is pretty damn close if it's not identical.
Well, I was just gonna say what it sounds like what you were working on was close to or as elegant as a commercial product. It was close to being as elegant as a commercial product in the sense of like, you've got this script, it modifies this other script, and it has these features. I'm sure you could have made it work if you had the inclination to do so. Like it's not it doesn't, from the work that I know that you do, personally and professionally, I know that it's just like, it's at some point, it sounds like you just ran, because there are existing solutions to the problem that money solves. It's like, I'm done with this.
Yeah, that's what it kind of came down to. It finally ended up being a matter of, I can pay $50 for this and get all this time that I'm going to spend making it work available to me to do other things, or I can keep tweaking and making this other thing work and save $50. And it was just worth it to pay $50.
Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes the time spent on a problem like this is like, it's like, oh, this is scratching an itch that I have, and it's like, it's not even that it's like the money is more. It's not that the money is more valuable. It's like it's a fun project, but after it sounds like time passed, and it's like my time is more valuable than the money that it would cost to solve this problem.
Yeah, that's pretty apt. It also was one of those things that I just finally reached a point where I was tired of tweaking.
Right.
I enjoy making things work, but there are certain things that once you get to a point, like realistically, these tools were not developed for Mac OS.
Right.
They're holdovers and things that work in Mac OS because of the Unix shared structure. And so at a certain point, it's like, all right, I can keep making modifications and tweaks and getting it to work, or I can just accept that I don't care to take it that far here because this other thing that I'm trying to get done is more interesting to me at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. You just lost interest in the project.
Right.
So it's interesting. You haven't outright said that you didn't like Parallels. You just sort of alluded to, like, Parallels used to be, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like a kind of a garbage application, or it wasn't. It certainly was. I feel like it's previous experiences with Parallels, you might say, are comparable to current experiences with VirtualBox. Is that accurate?
That's pretty close.
Okay.
I would never say that it was as bad as VirtualBox in comparison. It just didn't feel as fluid and seamless as the current iteration does on a relatively modern generation Intel Mac. And I keep making the distinction because I can't draw parallels to what it might be like on the M1 Mac. Because I haven't tried it there.
You can't draw parallels. I saw what you did.
Yeah. I should actually. I should try it on the M1 Mini. The problem is that the way I have that Mini set up, it's completely separate and remote access only. And I don't necessarily want to move it and go through that headache at the moment to do a test that's not going to be a actual daily use kind of thing. So I'm kind of just waiting until I get a chance to play with a next generation M whatever series,
right?
Apple notebook, however long that may take. Like I'll wait because I have no doubt that it'll be even better. But the current iteration on the Intel Mac, and I've got I think this is a 2019 MacBook Pro, 2018. I don't know. I could look, but I'm feeling lazy.
To be fair, there's not a lot of difference between the 2018 and the 2019.
Yeah, minimal. So either way, like anything in that general range. But I've been impressed, I have to say. It doesn't feel like it's being virtualized. It feels like it's running native. And that was my goal with exploring the implementation with QEMU. And my previous experiences with Parallels would go back to versions like 4 or 5, something like that. So very early on, where honestly, I think anything you used to virtualize an OS then was going to feel sluggish anyway. But it felt annoying at the time in a way that VirtualBox feels annoying now. So that part would be a good comparison. But it was usable and it did its job well, even historically. It wasn't the solution I needed at the time.
Yeah. I played around years ago with VMware Fusion and Parallels, and played around with them side by side. And it was a lot of it was just to be informative to people who needed them. Like I was asked questions a lot about Windows virtualization, and I played around with both of those side by side, and I at the time I felt like VMware was the better product, but I remember a version of Parallels that came out. It was like around 5, maybe like version 5, and it was just like okay. The things that my gripes about Parallels was resolved around version 5, and then it was just like, well, which one's on sale right now? Because I remember they used to be so competitive with one another in the late 2000s. They were so competitive, and they would vary in price by $10 or $20, and so it got to the point where it's like, if you got to do it, then either one's fine. So.
Yeah, the only reason I didn't even look at VMware this time around is because it was $20 more expensive, and I just wasn't going to do that. Either I was going to go with the cheapest one, and it was going to be extremely capable and do what I needed, or I was going to figure out the QEMU implementation. And upon doing the free trial with Parallels and finding the performance to be on par, or no discernible difference, that's what made it all right, I will do that. I have no problem with that.
So, I guess this is the last tidbit that I have about virtualization, and it's that when I was looking around trying to get QEMU to work for me, I definitely found a guide on how to get OS 9 running on a modern Mac with QEMU. I thought that was pretty cool. I couldn't get that to work either.
That's something I might actually play with. I wonder...
Yeah.
I haven't looked because my use case for virtualization in this specific instance has been solely focused on Linux, multiple different distributions. But I haven't looked to see what kind of support there are for just older Mac OSs in general. I need to look that up and see what's available.
So I could remember, like, if I could have, I didn't have a lot of impetus to get it to work. I just, I thought maybe if this, guide is as straightforward as it appears that it is, I'm going to try it. And so I ran through it a few times and never got it to work. But 6 years ago, I would have worked as much as as hard as I could to get it to work, because I had a client that needed all of his data from QuickBooks, from his old Mac, his old iMac to his new iMac. His old iMac was a Bondi blue first generation iMac. I was like, G3 iMac. I was like, wow. So I ended up having to figure out how to do it on the iMac. But it would have been so cool to have like gotten OS 9 running in virtualized and do the conversion that I needed to do. But it was also really fun to use that iMac. So, man,
I can imagine. I had I wish I hadn't gotten rid of it, but at one point I had the Bondi blue iMac that I had picked up secondhand for ridiculously cheap.
Oh man, did you ever see the aquariums that were made out of those iMac enclosures?
Yes, I have.
They're cool. They're so cool. I mean, it costs a lot of money to especially like I remember hearing about them in 2001. So like we're talking about an iMac that's like 3 years old, and people were retrofitting that, spending like hundreds of dollars retrofitting them in such a way that would make them watertight. And I'm just like, it's a cool idea. And honestly, I wish I had an iMac I had a G3 iMac I could do that with. I might look for one and do that. That'd be fun. But that since we're talking about old Macs again, I will say there is a gorgeous, great condition iMac G4, 20-inch display, the last model that Apple made, on sale on eBay with the original keyboard in good condition, the original mouse in good condition, both of the Harman Kardon speakers in good condition, the box, the all of the documentation and the packing materials in the box. $2,000.
I'm not surprised. It is higher than I would have expected, but I'm not surprised.
I put an offer in on it. I offered $200 for it. I was actually surprised that it wasn't auto-declined.
My initial guess would have been probably about 800, so I certainly think 2,000 is well overshooting, but it would not surprise me at all for it to sell at 2,000.
Okay, it's been relisted, and it's now it's been relisted for $850.
That sounds far more reasonable. Still overpriced, but more like what I would expect someone to try to get out of that condition, that model Mac.
It does have some bezel separation on the display, and he prominently shows that. So, I think he's a very reasonable seller. But it's $850. Like, you can buy a M1 Mac Mini for less money.
Yeah, but that doesn't appeal to the collectors out there. That appeals to the pragmatic use cases. Like if you had the option to buy an M1 Mac Mini or a pristine condition G4 Cube, which would you buy if the price was equivalent?
The G4 Cube.
Isn't that the same concept?
It's totally the same concept. I don't disagree with you, but I'm that dude that's like, but you could have. I mean, that's not the point.
Yeah, I mean the point is you can use that argument to try to drive the price down, but it's not because you don't think it's worth the price. It's because you want to try to get it at a better price.
Yeah, I don't want to. I'd love for my world to be like, yeah, I'll spend $850 for a 15-year-old computer, but I'm not in that world right now. I feel like
yeah, me either.
I feel like I will attain that in my lifetime, but but by the time I get that, it's like that computer is going to be like $1,500, and not all of that's inflation.
I am kind of tempted to put an offer in on it, though.
I mean, it's in great. Other than the enclosure on the top of the display, it's in great shape, and it's the only one. It's the only one that I've seen on eBay over the past. Let's see. I've been looking around for like a year. It's the only one I've seen with the box. Like, first of all, it's hard enough to find a 20-inch. Like. Right now, I think it's the only 20-inch that's on eBay. Well, because first of all, Apple didn't sell that many 20-inch iMac G4s. They only existed as the last iteration of that iMac, and it was the most expensive. So obviously, there's not that many of them. So they're pretty hard to come by. So again, if my life were just slightly different than it is right now, I would probably not hesitate to spend $850 on that computer.
Yeah, the talk about retrofitting has made me. I keep eyeing that G4 Cube that I've got. Like that's going to be my next thing. I'm going to pull it off the mantle and take a look at what the footprint looks like compared to the Mini. Because I know from a thermal perspective, the M1 Mini is going to run cooler.
Well, I was just going to say, from a thermal perspective, that's not even something that you have to consider at this point.
Right.
Even sticking an M1 Mac Mini logic board in the iMac G4, like, I'm not at all concerned. I mean, if you can stick one in an a MacBook Air and you don't need a fan, yeah, thermals are not what's going to be holding this back. Shoot, you could stick, if you could fit it in a 2013 Mac Pro, it would work.
Yeah, I'm going to be taking some measurements and looking at some ideas now. I think the biggest thing is going to be, do I really want to pull apart the M1 Mini prior to the expiration of warranty or not?
Right.
I think that's going to probably be the thing that says, you know what, I'll wait for just a little bit longer.
I'm looking to see if I've got the technician guide for the. I've got the technician guide for the iMac G4. I'm looking to see if I have it for the Cube.
I used the iFixit guide anyway when I pulled it apart before. It's pretty well documented, and actually really easy to pull apart. Like I almost think I could make it fit in a diagonal within the case where I wouldn't actually have to remove the internals, so to speak. Like I would remove them to make room to slide the Mini in, but I think I could fashion a bracket that would just hold it in place diagonally so it looks like the G4 Cube on the outside, but there's I don't know quite what that tolerance is going to be. I'm going to have to actually pull it off the shelf and just see how close it is, because I do think the Mini is wider even at a diagonal. But if so, it's not by much.
But the logic board might not be that wide because that power supply is inside that case.
Oh, right. It's definitely not. Like the point is, like, right now, I wouldn't want to pull it apart from the warranty perspective.
Right.
So if I can make the entire casing fit and still make it look like the Cube,
I see.
I would do that in a heartbeat. If not, I'll wait until the warranty expires, and then I'll pull it apart and just slide the internals in the Cube.
Gotcha. So I was just going to say, I did find the technician guide for the G4, and I forgot the latch system that you use to pull it out of the polycarbonate. Sorry, polycarbonate. It's like pulling like a nuclear reactor out. It's so cool.
And so simple.
Yeah.
Like it was so far ahead of its time from a design perspective. You can appreciate that ease of access a lot now with how we went from horrible ease of access to phenomenal ease of access back to, like, you might as well not even unscrew anything.
Yeah. Well, if you don't have a pentalobe, the Apple's like, don't unscrew anything. You're not allowed to pay the pentalobe tax. So, yeah. I don't know. I keep turning it around to these old Macs. I keep turning this conversation around. Like, let's talk about old Macs again. Tell me something. Tell me something new that we talked about in episode 8.
Yeah, this was. There's not a lot to say, obviously, because it's a very slow, painful process for me to work on this side project. But I had mentioned that I don't have enough side projects, apparently, because I had embarked upon an endeavor to play around with iOS development. And the original idea, since then, I completely scrapped. I learned a lot, but I took almost everything that I learned and applied it to a new idea. And the whole reason it came up again is because I sent you a screen recording of what I had done so far, just because I felt fairly proud of being able to accomplish that much. And it, the heavy lift is not even here yet. Like there's so much more to be done that with the amount of time that I have dedicated to it, we're talking easily probably the rest of the year, if not better, before that's even a functional like alpha. But it's taking shape in a way that makes it interesting and makes me want to continue down this path. And I think it's pretty neat. And so I figured I would mention that this side project, while not ongoing in the original way it was envisioned and mentioned in episode 8, is alive and well. Just kind of a check-in on it. It's just slow moving.
I like what I saw, and I like the solution you're solving, and I look forward to your hopefully. I'd love to be an alpha tester. I'd love to be a beta tester, but I look forward to seeing your progress on this. I think it's a cool thing.
Yeah, the biggest hurdle right now is that I've got the basic framework for the UI done in a way that I'm okay with or happy enough with to start. There's certainly some refinement that I would like to figure out how to do, but from a functional perspective, it's there. So my next step is understanding data persistence and figuring out how I want to implement that, because right now, if you were to force quit the app or give enough time, it just defaults back to the original. Like at this point, there is no data persistence, and so that's the next thing for me to learn.
Features, security feature. Nobody's ever going to steal your data.
Yeah. The big question, honestly, is do I implement it from a just stored file within the application itself, or do I attempt to implement core data? And I haven't decided which way I want to go yet. Mostly because core data seems daunting, and I figured out how to read from this other data store, so I should be able to figure out how to write to it. But I feel like there's more margin for error going that route than leveraging core data. So I don't know. I want to play around with both and figure out what the pros and cons are, and that'll influence the long-term decision.
Well, is it one of those things where, like, if you decide not to use core data, could it become a feature of like 2.0, and not even necessarily like, hey, here's a feature that you would want to get 2.0 for, but a feature like, the developer, this is a feature for me.
From what I understand of core data, sure. The problem is that I don't really understand core data yet, but that's not surprising. Like I didn't understand anything about reading from a data source when I first started playing with the app development, and now I have it reading from JSON files without a problem, and I understand that interaction. So I don't think it would be difficult to understand the same from the core data perspective. The problem that I've put in front of myself is that I have to refactor everything that I've done to use core data. And I don't know that I'm ready to do that yet, if I can figure out how to reliably leverage JSON files within the app bundle and not have it overwritten or damaged or corrupted, or figure out some method for preserving it on updates or in different states or backups, etc. Like basically, if I can understand that, or if I can get that working reliably, what is my advantage to using core data? And I don't know that I have an answer for that yet, but part of it is because I'm still like ridiculously new to the world of iOS programming, and so I'm biting off sections of what I finally can interpret and understand appropriately, and then basing comparisons on what I learned from doing that to what I find available for other pieces. And so far I have yet to see a compelling write-up on why I would use core data other than it being a supplied by Apple fairly foolproof data store. And it's fine, like those are selling points, but how likely is it that my structured data file is going to be corrupt or mishandled in a way that's not recoverable as well? That's the big piece that I don't have a good comparison of those two. So why would I leverage a proprietary data store that I rely on versus a fairly universally applicable data store type that I could then place wherever I wanted? Like thinking about the roadmap to, if I were to extrapolate this to another platform and I could rely on, you just tell me where you want to store the data, whether it's, iCloud, Dropbox, what, I can work with that. Seems like a better roadmap idea than locking myself into core data.
Yeah. I mean, the more flexibility you have, the ability to expand to other platforms is really important. But I find, I'm just like, I don't know what I'm talking about, but
that's fine, because at this point I still don't know what I'm talking about yet. Because I don't know anything about core data. Like I don't truly know what it gives me or, doesn't give me in comparison yet.
I would just have a hard time expecting that if you put something in core data, that you can't get it out. Like in a way, and when I say can't get it out, I mean you can't get it out for use on other platforms.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. And let's clarify too that there's no way I'm ever going to develop an Android application. That's just not.
I mean, the web is a platform,
right? But the likelihood of me even developing a web version of an application is pretty low compared to me wanting to provide the experience specific to iOS and maybe expand to macOS.
I mean, see, I feel like macOS would be the one that would take advantage of it the most. But if you could basically spend like 2 hours in an afternoon and be like, okay, now I can take this data and it works with this website. Yeah, that's like kind of a no-brainer. I mean, or rather, so maybe 2 hours is not that sounds like an unreasonable time frame, but there's a time frame where you could say if it was that easy and that little amount of time, yeah, this is a no-brainer. I want to be here because being in more places means you're more likely to be used. So,
yeah, there's definitely a case for that. I think part of why I even have this idea in my head of maybe it's better not to use core data is because while I may never develop those complementary applications, there's nothing to say that this doesn't become something where I decide to collaborate with somebody else to help implement those different variations. Although my focus is going to be within the Apple ecosystem specifically, it may be something that proves useful enough that I have someone else work with me to create, a web interface or an Android app equivalent or Windows or whatever the flavor of the day for anything else is. If I build around figuring out a in-application storage mechanism or data store that doesn't rely on Apple-specific technologies, that's easier to accomplish, I feel like, with very little effort compared to understanding the differences between implementing it with core data and implementing it with a different technology elsewhere, and being sure that those things interoperate and play well together. I think that makes sense, but at the same time, I do, kind of similar to what I think you were getting at, I fail to see where core data wouldn't allow me to do that if I understood more about core data. I just don't have that understanding around it yet.
Right. I mean, again, it's like, even if it's as I don't want to say clumsy as an export, because like export can be nice, but even if it's like, okay, I've got this information, I wanna sync with the web interface. I can't see how, or it would be surprising to me that there's not a way to take that data that's and convert it into something else that's usable somewhere else that's not Apple proprietary. So that's just me trusting,
I think it's perfectly
Apple,
perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
And what very, very, very little I know about core data is basically that you create this data model, and so you have something defined for your data structure, and then you're just relying on core data to handle the actual storage of it based on this model, which really isn't that different than, like, what I'm using currently is a JSON file. And so the JSON has to be mapped in a structure and appropriately referenced by the application as well. So that piece is identical. It's just that with the JSON, I'm directly storing the data in the appropriate place within that JSON file. Whereas with core data, I don't have to actually know anything about the storage of it. I think that's the big benefit, is that you get to abstract that piece and just rely on core data to handle all of the underlying pieces. The only thing you have to understand is the data model itself, which somewhat makes sense, especially for complex data stores. But what I'm putting together so far is not something I would put in the realm of a complex data store. At the same time, though, I can see how what I currently have could eventually become unbearable from a performance perspective, depending on how much data was stored. And I think that's the big thing where core data may solve a problem before it becomes a problem. I think the biggest thing is that I still have a lot to learn about those core technologies. And everywhere I look, things assume a certain level of knowledge and understanding beyond what I currently possess to be able to easily interpret whether it makes sense to go one way or the other yet.
I feel like that you've just described all of software development. There's an assumed existing knowledge and so on and so forth. So
yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. I've seen, by nature of work and interactions in general with developers for different technologies and platforms, there is definitely a lot of that. Part of it is just getting your feet wet enough to start to understand the terminology, and then you can navigate the landscape really well, even if you don't fully understand it. I'm still at that point where I have this vague understanding of how the things that I've accomplished work, but I don't truly grasp some of the components yet. There are a few missing linkages from not having a structured introduction to it, and it be something that I want to do this, and I want to know how to do this, and so I kind of piece it together and tweak it to make it work. And there's a lot of piecemeal bits and pieces of Googling to figure out how I make these things work, limiting myself to Swift and Swift UI, just from an ease perspective, that I think that is part of why I haven't grasped some of those other pieces as well, because some of them still rely on interoperability with Objective-C and some of the underlying ancient may not be the right word, but older technologies and frameworks and understandings of how things were implemented. And I'm trying to avoid learning anything really about Objective-C, if I can do it in pure Swift UI, I will. If I encounter something that I want to implement that I have to absolutely know something about Objective-C, I may learn a little bit about how to do that. But if I can find an alternative that doesn't use it, that's the route I'm going to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think Apple would. I think it's like, obviously the direction there's going is like, we don't want anything, like if you shouldn't have to rely on Objective-C.
Well, that's certainly the desired place. But listening to other people talk about things based on the complexity of the app, it seems like it's just not something that's completely there yet. But I fail to see how what I'm putting together couldn't be done that way. And I think that's part of also what limits some of the information that's available to me, is because most of the people doing a number of the different things that I've searched for and looked to implement are maybe doing Swift, but they're still using the old interface builder. Or
right.
There's this piece in Swift UI, but they're still using older Objective-C classes or something, and trying to understand which pieces I need to research more and understand more, picking out from that without having the Objective-C background has just muddied it a little bit. It hasn't been impossible. It just means I have to search multiple times and refine and then figure out, based on different posts and examples, which components are the ones that I'm actually looking at and trying to understand.
Yeah. I mean, basically you're not being held back by Objective-C, but you're being held back by Objective-C.
Right. Just, the amount of Swift and Swift UI knowledge that is published in general is just lower in quantity than what is published for Objective-C based on sheer number of years of use,
Mm-hmm.
All that said, I am very happy with the progress I've made so far. My decision to scrap my original idea was only, I'd say, about a month and a half ago. So what you saw was technically
a month and a half worth of work.
You could say that, but I mean, the reality is that I'm not working on it that constantly. So, it's really a week's worth of work over that month and a half.
That's really good, and I mean, to be able to put out at least to record, do a video recording or screen recording, and be like, this is what I can do. This is how we can move around. That's promising.
Well, and to even be able to just convey an idea of what I'm trying to solve.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a cohesive element to it that it's a lot easier to understand, even though there's a lot of work to be done. The most difficult part of developing the UI, I think, has been done. So anything I add from a UI perspective is relatively easy to adapt or add based on what I've figured out. Like the most complex piece that I have remaining is something that might be difficult to figure out depending on how I choose to handle user input. But that's not what I'm doing first. First is just how do I want it to look? How do I want it to navigate and feel? Because honestly, the heavy lift is making all of it actually work programmatically and not just read data. And so while it's going to take me, I'm sure, another month and a half to finish out all of the UI elements and have all of that done, like the way that I'm approaching it is, let me get everything in a display format first. Once everything's displayed, it's just a matter of implementing, all right, what should this display and how does it calculate it, instead of just read it from a default value. Or maybe it will be a default value and I just need to find a way to have a user input that value or add to it or edit it. So I feel like while that may be the heavy lift from a time perspective, I feel like that's the easier thing to do than to figure out all the UI navigation and elements.
Yeah, because UI navigation elements are more technical, and this is more like...
Well, it just feels like I spend a lot more time tweaking and changing the UI, whereas the other piece is either it works or it doesn't, and I can figure out why it works or it doesn't, or what it's reading from or needs to read from. Or,
right.
You know, it's just a different subsystem.
It's not quite so subjective.
Yeah, I don't know if that's... I started to go that route too, but I don't know if that's quite the word. I think it's just more... The interface is crafted for the user to leverage the application in a way that makes sense.
Ease of use.
And I keep finding little things that it's like, you know, it would make more sense if this was tweaked ever so slightly, or if this did something just a little bit different. And so I feel like UI refinement is just a more difficult process. And it may just be that that's because it's more difficult for me, and for another developer, it's the other side that is that much more difficult. But that's the reason I chose the approach I took. If I can get all the UI working the way I want, I can make the underlying data work.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would expect that most developers would agree with you that figuring out how the UI layout is harder than how to handle the data, because you want discoverability and God, the word is escaping me. I told you I was not good with the words tonight. You want discoverability and intuitiveness. So
right.
Those things are slightly more abstract with, well, where should I store this data, and how should I call this data, and how do I manage this? Those things are going to be a little more, I don't want to say straightforward, but it's not subjective to this person or that person, whereas UI is a little more subjective. I just remember, years ago, somebody asked me, how do you turn off your iPod? And I was like, you hold down the play pause button. And they're like, that's not intuitive. I was like, I don't know, maybe it is. I don't know. I feel like maybe it's not intuitive. Maybe it's not discoverable. But I just remember sometime after that, just paying attention to people talking about discoverability and intuitiveness, and those being harder to pin down than some of the other technical things that you have to deal with software development.
I think there's also an element of, when you're talking about things that aren't being displayed, it's just a technical problem that you have to solve, right? You just have to think about what it's supposed to do, and how do you programmatically make it do what it's supposed to do. Whereas with the UI, even though I'm doing it programmatically as far as, you know, putting in different things to shift, it's not like I'm dragging things around in the old interface builder. But it's something that I have to make some changes and kind of look at and see what I think and how I think that applies to someone using it, and whether it would be frustrating or not. And then if I make a change, it may cascade into multiple changes throughout the entire app, whereas a programmatic change, unless you're really changing a core framework, like the initial spark of, do I do my own data store or core data, that kind of thing may touch a large part of the application. But in general, anything that I would be doing programmatically is going to touch one little section of code. Whereas the UI may have a trickle effect, because one tweak here might make this other piece just horrifically unusable, or seem out of place, or doesn't feel like it flows the way it did originally because of this other tweak. Like I think there's a lot of that to it as well.
Well, I think your decision on whether or not to use core data or some other file to read from is also a good example of, like, I have no idea which of my apps use core data. I have no idea. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I just need it to work the way I expect it to work, or the way it's advertised to work. Or, you know, and it might be like, well, I need it to do this thing, and that might be the difference between, well, I have to, you know, I use core data versus I don't. So, but like, that's all. That's not, none of that is my problem as far as what technology is used. It's just that it just means that, you know, a certain set of features may exist or not exist because certain technologies were used or not used. Whereas the UI is something I'm always going to be interacting with.
Yeah, and you know, just circling back to that, you make a pretty good point in general. Like the stuff that I'm not worried about, that I know may be a heavy lift, but is something that will just be done, are the things that I don't expect the user to care about.
Right. That's, you know, and again, that's why I think that the things that the user will see, interact with, everything that has to do with the user experiences, I feel like going to be the more difficult part. Unless you have that app that's like the Bling app, where it's just like you open the app and it was just like a big Ruby or something. Do you remember that app?
Yeah, wasn't that the like $1,000 app or something?
$999. All 8 people that bought it got a refund. Even the ones that knew that they what it was that they were buying, all 8 of them got a refund. Did you have any? Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much it for what I had to go into. I just wanted to kind of provide a touch point since it's been a while.
Yeah. I know you and I had talked about it. Like, actually, even you and I, like, we spit. It's like sometime after you had changed gears, like, I got to be like, Jesse, I got to thinking, Jesse hasn't mentioned this in a while. And I think I actually, I can't remember if I brought it up or you brought it up, but when it was brought up, I definitely have been, you know, had the thought, I was like, yeah, Jesse hasn't talked about this in a while. And I thought it was, yeah. I like what you're doing. I think that would be a fun app. I think it's going to be a fun app.
Yeah, it's just at this point, it's just a matter of how long it takes me to get it to a usable state for something other than just fun.
And I think that the thing is that, like, the people, the demographic that you're targeting is going to love that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern isn't that it wouldn't be usable and well received. It's that I may not think of the amount of detail that the target demographic might really want to capture.
That's your beta testers. Like, in terms of like your target demographic, I would be a terrible beta tester. I mean, I'd certainly find use for it, but I'm not going to uncover the things that you need to uncover for your target demographic. But that just means that you need to have beta testers, that specifically someone testing not for functionality, but like, why doesn't it, you know, basically, you know, testing for feature set.
Right. And I have a feeling like there are a few thoughts that I already have there. It's just a matter of getting it to a point where that can even be a conversation.
Yeah. I mean, technically, you're going to be the first beta tester that, I mean, you're going to do both. I mean, but you're going to be the first beta tester that's like, I need it to have these things. And then the people that are like you are going to also tell you the things that they need that you don't necessarily need.
Right.
I mean, and then it's going to become one of those things like, oh, I didn't know I needed this.
And then it's going to grow into, oh, but I could also do that with these things that
I
originally envisioned. And yeah. That's how roadmaps and backlogs get developed.
Yeah, that's kind of the fun part. So yeah.
I think that wraps the show, unless you had anything else you wanted to add.
No, that's it.
You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at untitled_hosts. Send us an email at untitled.hosts@gmail.com or follow the feed directly at the untitledpodcast.com. You can also find all sorts of ways to contact Jesse at jthart.com. Thank you for listening. That's a wrap.
All right.
I'm gonna send you a photo.
All right.
Because this is going to be completely out of left field.
Honestly, it's been like 30 minutes that I've been thinking about what is this? What is this new obsession?
So I ordered a cap. And specifically it's Boston Scally Cap. And I think that's the name of the company. I can find the website. If you search for Boston Scally Caps, though, it'll come up. The reason I first saw them in that photo, the gray one, you'll notice has a clover pin.
Yeah, I'm right now. I'm looking to see which of them have a Liverpool crest. I thought maybe the black one did, but I was like, no, that's too wide.
Yeah, no, so far they don't have a pen that has that. So the obsession that I have now is with the caps in general, and the fact that this company makes these pens as well. And my obsession is deciding on a cap to purchase and pairing it with the right pen for whatever reason. So the gray one was easy. So the gray one was the first one I ordered, and I ordered it to see if the size would even fit my head, because these are fixed cap sizes. And I didn't know if it would or wouldn't, or what I would think of it. And so I got it in, and it's a limited edition based on the Boondock Saints.
Nice.
And so when you look inside the cap, it has Equitas Veritas embroidered in the cap.
I want to see a picture of that at some point.
Well, so the little pin that you see, the clover, has Equitas Veritas on the pin as well.
It does. Oh.
And I'll take a picture of the inside of the cap tomorrow and send it. But that's what caught my eye, and that's why I even ordered it. And so I put it on, and Emily had a chuckle about something with the golf course. It's like, no, I don't care. I like it. I'm sure it looks ridiculously stupid on me, but I like it. And so after that, I ordered the other two. So one of them is black, and then the pin that's on that one is a black rose.
Mm-hmm. I see that now.
I'm sure there's some symbolism to it that's not related to what I associate it with it. But while I was in Boston, I went to the Black Rose. And it was just a fun pub / establishment to visit. And so that's what I associate it with. And then the other one has a green panel, and then the rest of the panels are charcoal. That's a charcoal.
That's like a dark charcoal, heather charcoal.
Right.
Or maybe it might actually be dark enough to be considered heather black. Or black.
I think they marketed it as charcoal. But
okay.
Description-wise, it could certainly fit either one.
Honestly, charcoal is actually quite a dark. It's like actual charcoal is black.
Right. And the pen that I put on that one was a whiskey glass on the rocks.
Nice.
And the back of each of them has something embroidered. So two of them have a Trinity knot on the back. Mm-hmm. The Boondock one has a 4-leaf clover, and it's dark enough that you can't really see it anyway. The Trinity knot is actually embroidered in white, so you can see it. But for some reason or another, I find these insanely fascinating, figuring out combinations that I like for a hat and pen. Even though there's nothing that says you have to have the pen on the hat in the first place. It's just they sell both. And so I started pairing both. And I just think it's fun. And I like the caps regardless of how they may look on me.
Yes. I've got 2 thumbs up for you on these. Especially as next winter rolls around, this will be a good accessory in your wardrobe. Actually, when I saw the green one, I think the green with the single panel green with the charcoal. So I guess is that 6 panels?
Yeah, well,
or
I think
five panels.
I know they make a 6-panel variant and a 5-panel variant based on the model quote unquote cap that you order. I don't know if there's anything different, if there's like 4 or 7 or what, but I know 5 and 6 exist.
Well, just like, so it looks like the ones the 3 that you have are 5-panel. Is that right?
I think the gray one is 6-panel, but it's made in a way that's really difficult to tell. I would have to go inspect it.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, I can't tell from the pictures, but the green and charcoal one looks like it to be a 5-panel. And again, maybe not. Anyway, the 2 front panels are green, and they're might be just slightly too dark green, but I could definitely see maybe just like a lighter shade of green. I could definitely see that paired well with a Liverpool crest pin.
Yeah, I'm going to pay more attention to the site now that I've ordered a couple and am on the mailing list and everything. It seems that they do fairly regular, like, special editions. Granted, my exposure is, a couple of months tops, but I've already seen a few things about this edition available and that kind of thing. And for some reason or another, I just find them fascinating. And Emily laughed when the green and the black came today. And so I put them on and made a look, and something about the look of smug satisfaction when I put it on just made the whole thing.
I mean, that's quite a feat, because you're no stranger to a smug look.
Not in the least.
So just for that to be I'm just like, that's kind of an accomplishment there. That yeah. Anyway, I look at that and I definitely see this would be a great, like, it reminds me of autumn in New York. I think both times, I'm trying to think, both times I visited Boston, it was in the autumn, and it feels, it has an autumn, I automatically have this, autumn, I think of autumn looking at these, and then that makes me think of, like, drinking whiskey around the fire.
Yeah, there may be a subconscious element of that for me as well, especially considering the mention of going into the Black Rose and having that associated with the pin that I put on the one cap and everything else. But I think part of it is also that I've never really been a cap wearer. And these are the first ones that I have ordered and tried that fit my head well without hair and feel really comfortable as a result. I could probably make the same case for any fixed cap at this point, but these happen to be the ones that I tried first, with a shaved head. And for some reason or another, felt an immediate attachment to everything about it, and part of it may very well just be the Boondock Saints reference with the first one as well.
I mean, we're getting on to, like, later this year. I just realized later this year it'll be like, I've known you for like a decade now, almost a decade, and I feel like this suits you.
Yeah, I think that's just further justification for my random obsession and fascination with them.
Well, since we're talking about some of your obsessions, I know I already sent you already messaged you about this, but I went ahead and pulled the trigger on my first Peak Design order, and I think I put together that when I ended up buying, I put together in a cart maybe 3 or 4 times prior. And I guess it took. So I was I've been using this, like, relatively inexpensive, like, really this small duffel that Timbuktu made years ago, and they made several versions of this duffel. It was like the Timbuktu BFD, which stood for big fucking deal, and is this little duffel bag. That was made out of, like, this very thin ripstop nylon, or we could talk about ripstop later on, but because it's a term that's overused, so maybe ripstop's not the right word. Anyway, it's a material that looks like ripstop nylon, And I'd used it for years. I think I've had it since like definitely before I got it in probably like 2013. And I used it as a gym bag and used it so much, had it in the front seat of my car so much that like the top material faded, and I felt bad about that. I was like, oh, I could have avoided. I could just stuck it in the back seat. Anyway, I was walking out of my house. One of the straps snagged a doorknob and just ripped it apart. And I was like, okay, I need a new duffel bag. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get this one that I've been looking at for quite some time, and I'm pretty excited. It gets here on Friday.
Yeah, I know we've covered my overly excessive love of Peak Design products in the previous show.
They make good stuff. I mean, it's good stuff.
And they back it with a lifetime warranty. I haven't had any issues with anything from them that I couldn't reach out to support and have taken care of. And I've only had to do that on one thing, and it wasn't even one of the bags.
Yeah. Well, here's one of the things I like about it. So Becca's always telling me, like, packing cubes are the way to go. So I got some packing cubes. I also got a shoe pouch. I got the wash bag, basically a dop kit, toiletry kit, wash bag, whatever. I think they call it wash bag. And I was like, yes, this is, sometimes I like for all my things to match. And this is one of those things where I like that they're all going to match.
And I think I was more surprised that you didn't include the tech pouch than anything. But I have some specific advice there as well.
And what's your advice on that?
So I have the tech pouch and I have the filled pouch, which come from two different lines of bags.
Mm-hmm.
For most scenarios, I find the filled pouch is better and it's cheaper, but it doesn't match the finishes of the travel line because it's from the everyday line. So there are some slight differences. I do, though, find myself using the tech pouch more when I travel, even though I don't find it to be as satisfying a pouch, but because it has more compartments and I'm generally packing tech for more than just me. If it were just the tech that I use, the filled pouch is perfect. And what I mean by that is I'm including two different Anker USB to wall outlet power bricks plus the assorted cables for my devices plus my wife's devices plus anything that might be necessary to extend that power run because of outlet location in the hotel or Airbnb or whatever, I can fit all of that in the tech pouch and it does well. But if all I need are my power brick for the laptop and a couple of cables for my devices, the filled pouch is by far superior because it's more flat. You have more than enough compartments and you can collapse it more. So from a packability perspective, if you're carrying tech and you're not having to worry about very many pieces, the filled pouch is definitely a better purchase.
I see that. I see. I'm looking at, I was familiar with the tech pouch because I was looking at it. And if I didn't already have a solution for this, I probably would have gotten it. But I'm looking at the filled pouch too, and it makes a lot of sense as well. I guess the reason why I didn't feel the need to get the tech pouch was because I honestly don't have that many. So I could fill this up, but right now all of the cables and accessories that I take I already have a solution for that in my backpack, and it's despite using a post 2016 MacBook Pro, I don't have a lot of things that I need to carry. For work, I've got I've got a USB-C to or it's a serial cable that has a USB-C connector on one end, so I don't have to do the double, like the serial, I guess the DB9 dongle. I like that I can just like plug straight into USB on my computer. But I actually still carry the dongle and the wires, even though I never use them. I have them as a backup. Well, I'm digressing. Anyway, I've got my brick and USB cable in there. I've got it's all in one pouch. They're all like, loosely coiled nicely in this one little zippered pouch. Like no pockets, nothing, just a little mesh pouch that I found in the office years ago. And it all fits there. I think my USB dongle that gives me USB-A and HDMI and Ethernet, that came with a pouch, and so that just goes in a pocket in my backpack, and my headphones go in a pocket in my backpack. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I could, if I got the tech pouch, I could fill it up, but so far it's one of those things I sort of thought, like, if work asks me to travel, I'm going to ask them to buy this for me, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the only reason I really end up using the tech pouch over the field pouch is because I'm just packing the assorted cables and everything needed for the family as a whole, plus a couple of things for camera gear or camera-related gear, like memory cards and the battery charger for the camera, like a couple of extra components that it does make sense to just put it all in that one pouch and make it easier. And it just overflows the filled pouch if I try to fit it all in there. But the filled pouch is what I drop in my work bag because I just don't have that much I need to put in there, and it's more convenient than using the pockets on the bag.
Yeah.
Because I can just put it and the laptop in the one big compartment together, and that's all I ever have to open.
Yeah. Yeah, when we went back and forth, when we went to and from the office, it was, I had a charger set up at my desk, so the charger that was in my backpack was only taken out like when I wasn't at my desk, and most of the time when I used my computer at home, work or personal use, it was the battery runtime was long enough to meet my needs. Sometimes, like I make sure like I take my computer off the battery or off the charger, once a month just to make sure that I'm using the battery. But yeah, it's now that we don't really, we're not moving, like I'm not moving it as much. It could be a desktop, but soon, it looks like soon that might be changing just a little more than it has been.
Yeah, we're certainly on pace for it to be better, faster than originally expected.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I still don't, I think after, like you say, when everything, when we're not thinking about COVID, like we're not thinking about, those, basically there are no new cases. Basically when we get to be like New Zealand and the whole world gets to be like New Zealand, I still won't be moving into the office. I won't be going to the office as much. But I did see that, and I guess maybe what I'm about to mention, we could maybe not edit it out of the show, but I did see like the position that, or I'll tell you this, there was an open rec for an IE for the Southeast region, and I don't know if it's filled yet, but our friend applied, and then he was like, he got a career experience with Apple and is no longer interested.
Yeah, so, he told me about his CE. I'm happy and somewhat jealous because it sounds right up my alley with some of the stuff that I was playing with.
I know, it's so cool. I'm so happy for him. But so anyway, I saw that in that rec, they are now like, it's like, it was open in such a way to, I guess, a more flexible rec in saying that there's going to be X amount of travel involved. And I was like, Ooh, I need to make sure that my boss knows that like I'm also interested in traveling after the world is a safer place. Because like I'd like to travel just a little bit for work. I think it's fun.
Yeah, I've had the experience of being able to make some interesting trips for work, and I've had a couple that were less interesting, but I've enjoyed having those trips.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to have a reason to have some sort of trip after this year.
Honestly, I would appreciate a week trip at least once a quarter. Like, I would love it if my job required that or allowed for that. I enjoy traveling to some extent.
Yeah, I think I would be okay with once a quarter. Realistically, I don't mind if it's just once or twice a year either. Like I don't mind it being relatively infrequent. It's depending on the type of travel. Like if I'm always going to the same place, I'm not interested. But if I get a chance to go different places every year or two, that fits in well with what I enjoy.
You know, I think about a friend of mine, and he had his travel, completely different industry, but his travel experience was, I think he went to Las Vegas twice a year and once a year to either DC, San Diego, or it was New Orleans, and then it changed to Atlanta. And so that's a minimum of three trips a year. And I was like, two of them are to Las Vegas. That's awesome. Like he didn't really do Las Vegas things in Las Vegas, but even if you're not doing Las Vegas things in like the Las Vegas things that people think about when they think about Las Vegas are like not that interesting to me. What's interesting, and they're I think quite frankly they're probably not that good. But what's interesting to me about Las Vegas is everything else is spectacular. Hotel, like you get the least nice hotel room. It's still a pretty damn nice hotel room, comparably. And then the food is amazing. So I those two things right there, that makes Las Vegas interesting to me. Like I don't have to set foot in a casino to do casino things, but the food, the accommodations, the shows, all of that's top notch. So plus there's climbing out there. They have great climbing in Las Vegas, just outside of Las Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas is still one of those places I haven't made it. So
I haven't gone there
either.
either. I haven't gone there either, and I want to go there. And like I feel like I have very different. Like I would love to go stay in a hotel in Las Vegas and eat the food in Las Vegas, so that I could also go climb in Las Vegas, or the mountains just outside. It's what's his name? Alex Hanel moved to Las Vegas because it was a good city to be based from, and there's good climbing there. Or maybe I'm pretty sure it was Las Vegas.
It'll just be a bit of follow-up for next week.
Yeah, it's either Las Vegas or Utah, but they're basically the same thing.
Not really, but okay. So I have been to Salt Lake, and I loved it. I thought it was a great place to go, but it is very different in a lot of ways as well. So
yeah, like I have been. I'm for the outdoor adventure aspect. I have been sort of enamored with Utah, but then I've had everyone who has just like even visited Utah. They're like, there's a thing about Utah that you should keep in mind about the people in Utah, and I'm like, I get it. I do get what you're talking about.
I will say that when I visited, it wasn't that it was overbearing or anything like that. It's not that it hits you in the face, so to speak. It's just that you notice some of the little things in ways that you wouldn't expect until you've been there to experience it.
That's kind of what people told me, and it's just like you'll notice. It's not bad. It's not a problem. You'll just notice.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So real-time follow-up, Alex Hanel does live in the Las Vegas area. In 2017, bought a home in the Las Vegas area, which I think was in Free Solo.
Which at some point I still need to watch.
Have you watched The Dawn Wall?
Of course not. I haven't gotten that far.
Okay,
We're not even finished with The West Wing yet.
So I would say watch Free Solo first, then watch The Dawn Wall, then watch Valley Uprising.
Yeah, based on what you were saying about them, that's in the intended order. Because I've watched part of Free Solo, I just haven't finished it, and so now at this point, enough time has gone by that I need to watch the whole thing anyway again. So
honestly, I was just thinking about, like, I was talking about this with Ellery, and it was just like something that would actually be complementary to the Valley Uprising is The Endless Summer Revisited. And that is a documentary about a documentary. Actually, the Endless Summer is not actually... I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if it's considered a documentary. There's certainly aspects of it that are fictional, just for giggles. You know, they did some things to, you know, for some, you know, cute laughs. It's totally a cool... I like it. I don't know whether they call it a documentary or a movie. It's certainly documenting. There's definitely a documentary aspect of it, and it's not in the mockumentary style. There's nothing mockumentary about it, but it's not exactly like you watch it and you know it's like, well, that's not exactly a documentary. So it's kind of this outlier. But the reason, you know, this might be a topic. Maybe you'll watch these things because you can watch these things around the children. There's nothing NSFW about any of those. Maybe the Dawn Wall. There's some bad words. I don't remember. But there's nothing NSFW about Valley Uprising and the Endless Summer Revisited. The reason they're in my mind, there are these different counterculture movements based around a particular sport. And they happen around the same time, and it would be interesting to draw parallels from them.
We might make that like homework and plan out a show that goes back to that with, you know, enough time to honestly try to watch them.
Yeah. I mean, we're doing a podcast, man. We could do this podcast forever, and
that
means we have time to watch, you know, do the things and come up with the topics. But I would want to rewatch both of them. It's been a while since I've watched either of them.
Well, I was just thinking that if we're going to do a show like that, it probably needs to be like X number of days before to record date. Like that's the window.
Yeah.
That you need to watch them to have some things fresh in mind and, you know, that kind of thing.
Agreed. And we got to have those. We both need to be doing, you know, looking at this particular source material like around the same time, like before the podcast, so that it's both fresh on our minds. It's fresh on both our minds.
Well, I think that calls it.
It does for me.
All right. Well, have a good evening.
You as well.
Bye.
Bye.